Recording in progress.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Art 196, Introduction to Designing Computer Graphics, or Web Graphics, for the fall 2021 semester. Today, we're going to be working on Lesson 6. And this is, when we're done with Lesson 6, this is what we will have completed. We'll have basically a template for all of our additional pages that we'll be creating. And in the upcoming lessons, we're going to learn how to add content in various ways. But for right now, today, I think probably just be working on the Navbar, and that's it. So if we were to look at the Navbar, if we look right here, this is what we left off with on lesson 5, was the basic structure or architecture of our page. And we added the proper syntax so that when we go in and we look, for example, at this second line here, this would be for the header. And you can see this is our main row. And then because this was divided into 3 columns, we can see that the middle one is the article. We have an aside to the left and we have an aside to the right. And then at the very bottom down here, we have one more div. We have our footer. Okay, so that's the basic structure of most websites. We didn't assign to the first row any additional syntax because that's where we're going to work today. And we're going to put in a Bootstrap component, which is a basic Navbar, but it's already set up for a responsive website. So we're really good to go. We will be modifying it considerably though. And then we will go ahead and we're going to customize it using cascading style sheets to add the look and feel that we're going for the overall website itself. So if we look up here at the top and make sure that I have CSS Designer selected and I have this particular document open, the my layout.html, which is in lesson 6. And before I go any further, I want to make sure that you know that we're working on lesson 6. Remember, I told everyone to create a site. What I'm doing here is I'm going to manage the site. This is the one that I created from last spring, and I'll use the same one. That when you double click on that, you need to make sure it says local site folder. Since we're working on lesson 6, this needs to be the folder that's contained inside lesson 6. You can see that we're in lesson 6. If I go to my Dreamweaver folder with all the lessons, I want to make sure that their lesson 6 is selected. That now becomes my root folder for this lesson. And then under advanced settings down here, select local info. And what we do here at the very top is where it says default images folder. We want to make sure that we select the folder contained inside, the image folder contained inside lesson 6. So I'll click here, go to images, I'm going to go to lesson 6 and make sure that that image folder is selected. Okay, now I can click save and done, and I'm set to go. Now there won't be any broken links, especially when we move on to lesson 7, and when we're done with lesson 7, I will show everyone how to create an account with infinityfree.net, and that will be our hosting service to be able to publish that particular lesson. So if we look at all sources right now, you can see that we only have in CSS up here, we only have Bootstrap at the moment. And if we look at our selectors down here, you can see that there are tons of them. There are tons of things that Bootstrap includes that we may or may not use. The selectors that are created in Bootstrap are ones that we only use and we never modify them. Many of them are intertwined or linked or cover, or one impacts another one. So you never know that if you make a change to one, how it will affect another. So in the Bootstrap, with the Bootstrap CSS, we just do not affect change any of them. And also, if we look here, you can see under media queries, here's one here for .led. And you can see if we were to look here under show set, it will show us that the font size is 21 pixels. So there are some presets that by adding our own style sheet, we can override or we can dominate. We don't delete these, we just write our own. And remember, as I was saying, the closest one wins. So in CSS, it will dominate the others. So that's what our style sheet will do. It will override those. So let's start by going back here. I'm going to go back to global settings here. And I'm just looking at all sources. And I'm going to look at the top column here. Okay, it says column small with a hyphen 12. Remember that one column is subdivided into 12 units. So that with the main content down here, remember that we have an aside, an article, and another aside. Each of those are 4 units, and we'll be changing those. But remember, 4, 4, and 4 adds up to 12. So anytime you add multiple columns, they still have to add up to 12 units. So let's go back up to here under div column small 12. And I'm going to make sure that it's selected using the tag selector down at the bottom. You'll see that it says div column small 12. I want to make sure that that is selected. And I'm going to go back here, make sure that it's highlighted in blue. And we're going to delete it. We don't need it. Don't delete the row, just delete that div that is contained inside the row. So I hit delete and it's gone. The cursor remains inside the div row. Leave it alone. Don't touch it, because what we're going to do now is I'm going to select insert. And insert, I want to make sure that I have Bootstrap Component selected. That's right here. And then if I scroll down here under nav, I want a basic nav bar. So under basic nav bar, I'm going to go ahead, and what I want it to do is I want it to be nested inside here. You'll see that I see it says source code up here, and then at the very top, see this says, oh shoot, let me do that again. I'm going to go do it again, select the nav bar. There we go, it comes here. I want it to be nested inside here. I click nest, and I'm going to click OK, or yes, yes. And you'll notice that we have, lo and behold, a basic navigation bar here with a search and links and drop-down menus and all that good stuff. But we don't need all of it. So now we're going to go back in and we're going to customize it and remove some of it. And then we're going to go back and we're going to add some things. What we really only need are our own links. We don't need the brand. We don't need the drop-down menu. We don't need the search, which is, we'll get to in just a minute. So let's start from the right and move towards the left. Okey-doke. So what I want to do is I'm going to select drop-down. And you'll notice that it's the only thing that's selected, and it happens to be highlighted in orange. And if we look down here, you'll see that if I click on the tag selector, that shows that we have the drop-down toggle. And then if I click over here, it shows a little bit more. It shows that we have the drop-down itself. Well, I want the whole unordered list to be selected. So with that selected, let's go back here under nav bar right, and I'm going to go back here, make sure that that's selected in blue, and you make sure in the code view, notice that I have split view selected here. I'm going to move this up just a little bit so we can see that I have within that, this is that I have the unordered list with the nav bar nav right, And there's the opening tag for the unordered list, and there's the closing tag. And I'm going to go ahead and delete it. It's gone. Okay. Let's do the same with the next. We're not going to have a search button. But if we look at the bottom, I don't want just the button. I want the entire Navbar form to be gone. I want all of it gone. So with you select using the tag selector down here where it selects the form, I'm going to go ahead and delete it. That's gone. As I said, we're getting rid of a bunch of these. I'm going to go back down to the drop down toggle, and I want a drop down menu. There's the list down, Navbar, unordered list. Make sure that the whole thing, nope, I don't want all of that. I just want the drop down to be selected, and that's it. So here's a list item named drop down. And again, here's the opening tag. There's a closing tag for that item. And we're going to delete and get rid of that. So we're getting rid of a bunch of these. The last one that we want to get rid of is over here where it says brand. Okay. So I want where it says class Navbar brand. I'm going to make sure that all of it is selected. That's the opening and closing tag for it, with the opening tag A, closing tag A. Okay, and you can see contained within there Navbar -brand. We don't need that, so I'm going to get rid of that. Boom, that's gone. So now we're ready to customize our links, and we're going to add links to these as well. Okay, so we're going to add new elements. We're going to first rename them, and then we're going to rename the ones that exist. And you can rename them from the live view, or we can do it in the code view. So if I double click on where it says link, notice that it's highlighted and I can type home. So that changes the name of it. And if you look in the code view, you can see that I just changed that. Okay. The same where it says link, I'm going to look at line 31, where it says link here. I'm just going to do this in code view now instead. So what I want to do next is I want green news. So we're adding our own for this upcoming website we're doing. And notice as I change it in code view, it's automatically changing it in the live view. So green news. Whoops. Now, if you want to create additional buttons, now home, I don't need a class active either. So I'm going to need to get rid of that too, because we're getting rid of the active. We're not using active. So let me make sure that I have class active removed. Gotta make sure that I'm doing that right. So I'm going to get rid of that. And it should, well, there we go. Okay. I need to get rid, let me undo that. I goofed. Oh, I see. We're going to get rid of the span tag soon. So let me leave that alone for the time being. I'm going to take green news, and I'm going to take the whole list item here, and I'm going to copy it. So here's the opening tag and the closing tag for a list item that we named green news. I'm going to hit Command C or Control C on your PC to copy. Then at the end of the closing tag for the list item, I'm going to hit return so that I go to the next line. And I'm going to paste. You'll notice that I have multiple. So not only will I have green news now, but I'm going to make the next one green events. So right where it says green news, I'll highlight it, or just even news, and I'll turn it into green events, EVENTS. Okay. So now I've added a third one. I'm going to go back in again, and I'm going to hit the return. I'm going to hit the next line. And I'm going to paste. You'll notice that I have multiple. So not only will I have green news now, but I'm going to make the next one green events. So right where it says green news, I'll highlight it or just even news, and I'll turn it into green events, EVENTS. Okay. So now I've added a third one. I'm going to go back in again, and I'm going to hit the at the end of the list item, hit the return, and I'm going to paste. And again, I don't want green news. I want, let's see, I don't want green events either. I have to look at the textbook these. We have a bunch of these that we're going to add here. So we have green events, and we have to go to, where are we going to go here? I think we want green travel. So let's put in here green travel for the next one. And I'm going to add a couple more here. Paste. And after green travel, we have green tips. And after green tips, what do we have? We have contact and about. So there's two more that we're going to add. So after green tips, we have contact. And one more to go after that. I'm going to go to, what is it, about us. So this is how you take an existing default Navbar and customize it to suit your own needs. But you have all of the basic code intact that comes with it. Okay, so about us. Okay, so here we go. So now what we need to do is we need to get rid of where it says class active. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. But I don't want to get rid of, let's see, I want to get rid of class active. Oh, come on. But I want it right before that caret. So if I delete that, now remember how let me undo that so you can see that. Notice how the home page is the active page and the background is a little bit darker than the rest. That's one of the states that you can create for buttons and links. We don't, in this particular website that we're designing, we're not going to have an active state. We're going to have, instead, we're going to have a hover state, which is when you hover over it, it changes its appearance. So we'll do that. So I'll get rid of that. And I also need to get rid of this span tag. So I come back in here and I want to get rid of the span tag. So I'm going to go over to the caret and at the very end where the closing tag is for the span tag, I'm going to get rid of that too. So now I have all of them. And the next thing that I should do before I do anything else is I should make sure that I save it. And then we're going to start to work with the CSS Designer. Okay, because you'll notice that it's not centered. We want to make sure that it's centered. We're going to change the background color. We're going to change the appearance of the links and the buttons and that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. File, save as, and I'm going to save it as my layout. I'll name it _01. Okay. And then later on, if I need to change the name of it, I can and get rid of the others. But I want to make sure that I keep my original one intact. That's just something, the way that I like to work. Okay. Okie doke. So that should be working okay. There we go. Okay, so we're going to work with CSS Designer. So I'm switching over here to the right from Insert to CSS Designer. Make sure that you have your window pulled over enough so that you see not only to the left where it says all sources, Bootstrap, we have our media queries and all those selectors, but you also see the properties over here. So either you see all the properties, the current one, or you can also select show set or not. Okay, so we want to look at all at the moment. And what we want to do first before we create our own is we need to create a style sheet. Even though we won't have anything in it, we need to create a new style sheet. Is a new source. So I showed you before that if we select all sources and we look at, Bootstrap in particular, we look at media queries, we can see that they already have a bunch of these already. Are we going to use them? Some yes, some no. So I want to go back to all sources again. And, you can see that they have an HTML, for HTML, for the body tag, for articles, the sides, and that sort of thing. They have a whole bunch of things already developed and designed for us using Bootstrap. So I'm going to go back to all sources, and up at the top here, where it says my sources, I'm going to click a plus. I want to add a CSS source. So I'm going to create a new CSS file. If you already had one, an existing style sheet, you could add that. Or if you wanted to, you could define it in the page. I don't want to define it in the page because then I would have to copy and paste for each successive page. I want to attach the style sheet, and then for all the new pages that I create, all I have to do is attach this existing style sheet, and it's already done. Okay. So as I make a change to the style sheet, it automatically will update all of the pages that are attached to it. So I want to create a new CSS style sheet, and I need to name it. And this is the importance of having a defined root folder, because where it saves it will be inside our root folder. So the name that we're going to give this is going to be, I think they want us to be my styles or green styles.css. So I'll name it green _ styles. I'm going to use my camel casing, styles.css. Okay. So now I can go ahead and I can click OK. And you can see that that's been added. There aren't any selectors that have been created yet, but that's what we're going to do next. So we have our style sheet that we can override some of the other things that we have here. So let me check here real quick. And I'm going to hold on. Let me go ahead. I'm going to pause my recording for just a second. Okie doke. So I'm back recording. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to select the background color for this. And then in the end, we're going to go ahead and we're going to center that. So to do so, we need to create here under selectors, make sure that we have green styles selected. I'm going to click the plus. So if I select in here and I select that, I really don't need to select any of it, because we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our own. I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus. And what I want it to be is .row space .navbar -default. And I'm going to hit the return key twice. Okay. So now I've added my own selector. Now watch what happens. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in here and we're going to look, and you can see under the properties, we can change the properties for the layout. We can change the width, the height, minimum width, a whole variety of things. We can change the margins, the padding. If we want to edit the text that is contained inside the navbar, we can. If we want to change the background color, add a gradient to it, we can. Each of these tabs, for example, for the borders, we can change the border widths and colors for this here. So what we want at the beginning here is we're going to change the background color. So that's what we're going to do first. And I want to make sure that under it says background color, I'm going to click on this here because right now there is no background color. Now I already have some that I have used from before. And you can see that I want this blue. You put in the hexadecimal number. You use the pound sign or the hashtag or whatever you want to call it, 069. Now you can see that it's actually 6 digits, 006699. Anytime you have duplicates like that, you can abbreviate it to just 069. So if I put the pound sign 069, okay, that will work out to be the same. So now I can go ahead and I can click off of it, and I added it to my selection of colors here. So I'm going to go ahead and click off of it, and notice that it changed the background. So there we go. We've got to start with that. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select, and I'm going to say save all. It's important that you don't just do a save as now from here on out, but you use a save all. And the reason being is that when you do a save as or a save, it saves the page, but it doesn't necessarily save the style sheet that goes with it. So when you say save all, I'm saving the page and the style sheet that goes with it. So the next thing that we want to do is we're going to create, in addition to a solid color, we're going to create a gradient background for this as well. So the gradient background is going to be as follows. We want the top color to be 069 and the bottom color to be 08A. So where we do that is over to the right, again, with the background button selected right here. And you can see that in addition to a solid color, we can have a gradient background. Now, the reason that we have both is that older browsers don't support gradients. It's only with CSS3, browsers that support CSS3 that we can have gradient backgrounds. So I'll click here. And what I want to do for the top color here is I want it to be I'll go ahead and put it down here. I'm going to use the hexadecimals. And I said I want it to be the pound sign 069. So there's the blue. Make sure that this is set to 180. And then the bottom one down here, I'm going to select that. And this, I said, this is pound sign 08A. So it's a little bit lighter, just a little bit. And I'll go ahead and I'll save that gradient as well. Now, when I click off of it, when I come here, you can see there's just a subtle little change here, but very nice. Nice, nice, nice. So now what we want to do is we're going to dress it up further. Each of these links need to be changed. So we're going to wind up adding some more selectors to this to be able to do this. Remember, I said everything that you want to change, you're going to have to create a rule for it. So the next rule that we want to create is the following, that affects just the buttons we have here, or links, whatever you want to call them. So I'm going to go ahead and click, I'm going to add a new link. And I want this one to be .row. So that think of the naming of these going from general to specific. Okay, so I have .row, and that's the row that was selected. I was in a space here. And I'm going to have .navbar, .nav, .nav, space, .navbar, hyphen, nav. And then I want a right caret, and I want list item. And then I want another caret, right caret, and I want A. And I'm going to hit return key twice. Okay. Now I have that one. So here's this one. So I'm going to select deselect, and I'm going to select nothing. And when I click on this, it should, let's see here. There we go. Should highlight in blue. So there we go, .nav, navbar, nav. Okie doke. So now what we want to do for these is we're going to go to the border. Is we're going to change the borders that go around each of these buttons. So the first one is that we're going to change the top. Now, remember I said you can have them uniformly changed all the way around, or we can change the top, the right, the bottom, and the left each separately. And that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to start by working with the top. The first thing is that we want the width to be 1 pixel. It'll be in pixels. So I want it to be 1. I'll make sure it's kind of small. Hit the tab key. Then I want the style to be solid. How do I know that? Because that's what the book is telling us to do. And then the top color is what I want is to be #0AE. So I probably already have it, but I'm going to put it in here anyway, because I don't remember. It's a lighter blue. #0AE. There's the light color. It's a light blue. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add that to our library of colors here. And I'll go ahead and click off of it. And you can barely see it at all at the moment. And now what I want to do is I'm going to make the right one a little bit different. So let's select the right. So that was the top. Let's select the right. And now let's do this again. I want the width to be 1 pixel. I want the style to be solid. And I want the color to be a little bit darker. I want it to be #037. #037. So that's darker. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add that color as well. And click off of it. Let's see if we can see it. Now we should be able to be seeing it. So I might have my name incorrect. I'm going to click in here where I have a space between the .nav and navbar. I'm going to go ahead and close that up and see if that changes it. No, so it doesn't. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to change it back again. Oh, you know why? Because I misspelled. I told you I'm a total goof when it comes to spell checking and typing. You'll notice at the very end here, I typed, instead of just navbar nav, I put an E at the end of nav. So that's why it's not working. There we go. Now I should be able to see it. And I'm not. So let's go back and I'm going to change the name of that again. Make sure that I have it right. Again, if you're off by 1 character, it won't work. There we go. I put two things. I put an E at the end of nav. That won't work. I also put a space between .nav, navbar. That should all go together. And you can see to the right, and I'm going to do the same for the bottom, that I have a little black line. So it's defining each of these buttons, and it will look a little 3-dimensional by doing this, by having the top light, the left light, and the bottom and the right darker. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work on the bottom now, and that's going to be the same as what I had before. With the right, it's going to be in pixels, and I want it to be 1 pixel. This is really tedious. So you're going to want to make sure once everything works, you're going to want to make sure that it's saved and use it for future reference. That's why web designers and coders and that sort of thing save a bunch of this stuff so they can copy and paste in the future or simply import things that they've already created, because it's really tedious to create all of these one at a time. For each of these, it's just overwhelming. So that was pound 037. So I want that color. Okay. So I've got the bottom done, and it's very hard to see, but it's there. And now I want the left, and the left is going to be the same as the top, and we will be able to see it. So again, on the width, I want it to be 1 pixel. I want the style to be solid, and I want the color to be the light, this light, 00AAEE. And you can see now these buttons are looking somewhat three-dimensional. It's very subtle, but it's kind of cool just the same. It's very nice. So the next thing, we have a few more things that we need to do to add some dynamic styling to all of this, is we're going to change, and we're going to create a hover state. Before I do, though, I want to make sure that I have, for the color of the text, this is going to be a light yellow color. So under T for this, still have this selector created here. I'm going to make sure that I have this light yellow here. When I click off of it, you can see that it reads kind of nice. And when we hover over it, it's going to change to white. But it was hard to see before. So all of this is applied to this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new selector for all of this. We want this, we're going to use this for both the A link, and we're going to use it for the visited. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on here, and I'm going to rename it. Okay. So at the very end of this, I'm going to type in, let me first copy all of this. So I'm going to select Command C to copy. And then after A, I'm going to put a colon and type in link, or just use link here. Then I'm going to put a comma and a space, and I'm going to paste. And where I have A, okay, I'm going to put a colon, and I'm going to put visited, so that it remains the same, even though when that website, that page has already been viewed. So I've got that changed now. Okay, so we have multiple attributes assigned to one selector here, and you can do that. But now what we want to do is we want to create a different state when we hover over this. So to dress it up a little bit. So to do that, I need to create a brand new selector. Okay, so I'm going to do that in a second here. I'm going to make sure that I'm in the right place here. So I'm going to go to, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a brand new selector. And I want this to be the same as before. I want it to be .row space .nav navbar .navbar. Make sure I spell everything correctly. Navbar nav. And again, I want the right caret. I could have probably LI and right caret A, and now I want it to be hover. There's one right here we can add, and I hit the return key twice. Now I have one for the hover state. So now what I want to do is we're going to change the background so that when we hover over each of these, that swaps out, and we're going to change the color of the text. So let me start by changing the color of the text. That's the easiest one. So with that one selected, I'll select T. And under color, I'm going to make sure that I use white. So let's bring that up to white here. Whoops. Oh, come on. And that's FFF. So I'll go ahead and I'll add that. Why not? We'll come back up here. Now, when I hover over it, let's see, it should swap. Let's make sure that, yeah, see, I misspelled the damn thing. I don't know why I put an E in there. That's why it's not working. Hit the return key twice. Now when I hover over it, now it's changing. I hope. I'm checking here, make sure that I have everything right here. Navbar row. That looks right. It's not working. So let me pause. Yeah, so once again, misspellings. I didn't, you need to make sure that everything is spelled exactly the way it's supposed to be. So I've got that changed. So let's go back and select that selector again. And now we're going to change the background. And we're going to change, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a gradient. And I'm going to select it. This time, I want this to be 0. So that should be at 0. And I'm going to click here. And I want this to be, let's see. I want the top to be 069. And I want the bottom to be 08A. Zero 8A. Okay, so I got to make sure that this is set to 0 degrees, not 5, but 0. There we go. And let's click here. Now let's see if we can see a change. When I hover over it, it's a very subtle change, but notice how the gradient flips. So these are some really sophisticated changes and additions that we've made to our Navbar, all through CSS, and also using Bootstrap as our original core unit to make everything work. The last thing that we need to do now is we need to, as I said, we're going to center all of that, because notice how all of the buttons are shifted to the left. So now what we need to do is create yet again another selector for this. Okay, and this is going to be .row, again, .nav bar nav, and then I want just that, and that's it. So it affects the nav bar and the nav. So now what I want to do is I'm going to select the first one up here under layout. And you can see that we have width is set to auto. I'm going to switch to pixels. And by doing that, notice that goes to 0. That's a good sign, because that means that I named my selector correctly. Now what I need to do is I'm going to put in the number that they've specified, which is 715 pixels, 715. Okay, so that sort of works, but not quite. So what I want to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to move that just a little bit. Notice as I slide this back and forth, once all of these reside on the same line, I'm good to go. Now they have 2015 or 715, and that's not working for me. So I'm going to change it a little bit, and then we'll go back and we'll make some additional changes just in case. Now what I want to do in the margins is I'm going to set the margins to 0 pixels and auto. So 0 is top and bottom, and auto is left and right. Now you can select each of these individually, or you can use what is a shorthand method. If the top and the way that they work is clockwise, they start at the top, then they go to the right, bottom, and left. So if I want the top and the bottom to be the same, I can put up here 0 pixels, 0 px. Then I can put a space, and then I can put auto. And I can go ahead and hit the tab key, and that changes that. Now it's still not centered. So I have one more thing that I need to do. And that is what I need to do is we need to come down here to the bottom. And this is where you really need the textbook, because it's going to be what we want to do is we need to add what is called a float. So I'm going to put in float. And I want it to be none. And that should center everything. And there we go. It centered it all. So now we've taken a generic looking Navbar and we've dressed it up considerably. I think it's looking pretty nice myself. This is one of the things that they have done, they've designed, that I think looks pretty darn good. You may not like the colors, but when you're doing your own website at the end of the semester using Dreamweaver, you can use the same template, the same style sheet, but just go in and make a copy of it and change the colors, change the text, add or delete buttons as needed. Okay, so I think that's it for today. What we're going to do on Thursday is we're going to work on the header. And let me go ahead and save everything first. File, save all. And again, remember, I'm saving all because I want to make sure that the changes to the style sheet are changed or updated as well. Because if you don't, and you'll may note that you'll see that when you have made a change, that there's a little asterisk next to the name of the page. But when you also make changes to the style sheet, and we have green styles here, here's a Bootstrap and jQuery, we don't change those. But to green styles, you'll also see a little asterisk. So if you just save the page and you don't save the style sheet, and that remains, then when you open the page back up later, after you've closed everything, it would go back to its original state, and you don't want that. So that's it for today. I'm close to the top of the hour, 11 o'clock. As I said, what we will be working on Thursday, and we might be able to get a little bit more accomplished, is we're going to work on the header. And if we can get all of the header done, then we'll continue to work on the asides and the main content and the footer. So this may take us into next Tuesday, a week from now. And then the next step will be in lesson 7 to add a media query, so that when we go down to a real small tablet size, that it goes down to 2 columns. And then we already have it set up for a phone. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing next. They've provided the images for us, and we're going to work with type in here, and again make a bunch more selectors and that sort of thing for ourselves to make sure that all of this is working. So here's my layout. Any questions before we leave today? It's again the initial construction of these pages is very tedious. Once it's working and it's in place, you want to make sure that you're very careful about how you make your changes. But when you do, it wouldn't take long at all to come back in here and to add or to remove the buttons, the links that we've created, and to change the styles at all, not just to edit them. That's it. We've already have them in place, but we wouldn't want to create it. We don't need to create any new ones. Okie doke. So we good for today? Any questions? No? Before we leave, I'll have this posted in day, but be careful with your typing. As you can see with mine, I put spaces where there weren't meant to be any. I also added, letters where there weren't meant to be, E's at the end of nav and that sort of thing. And all of that will affect whether your selectors work. If they don't work, stop as I did and, work it through to make sure that, go over it and troubleshoot it until it does work, and then make sure that it's saved. If you go too far with the lesson and things aren't working properly, it's going to be much harder to go back and troubleshoot. Okie doke. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, then I will call it a day, and I will see you guys Thursday. We'll work on the header. And hopefully we can get a little bit more done, but to modify the Navbar takes a lot of work. It's one of the hardest parts. Okay, so I'm going to pause the recording and say goodbye.